A second question that I think we need to deal with in this text is what is the point of Genesis describing to us this long conversation between God and Abraham? What is the point of this conversation? And the conversation you can read in Genesis 18, verses 20 through 33. So it's a fairly long section in which Abraham asks God, will you destroy the wicked along with, or the righteous, I should say, along with the wicked? And Abraham gives numbers. He says, what if there are 50 righteous? Once God reveals that he's about to destroy Sodom, Abraham sort of objects and then barters. He says, what if there are 50 righteous? What if there are 40? What if there are 30? Keeps working it down to 10, and they go back and forth, and God keeps saying, no, for the sake of that many, I would not destroy the city. What are we supposed to learn from this? Well, I think first and foremost, we see that God is a good judge, that God makes his decisions and brings judgment on people and cities and nations, not out of sort of an emotional anger or out of just a sort of jealousy or kind of human emotional reaction that we might see a king make a decision like this based on, but he bases his decisions on very solid principles of justice and fairness. Abraham even appeals to this. He says, will not the judge of all the earth do right? And here God is placed in a completely different category than the other known gods of the pagan world at the time. Abraham knows God is not like any of the other gods he has heard about. The pagan gods fight with each other. They get jealous over different people. They want people to do certain things for them and to help them in their rivalry with other gods. And they view people as essentially pawns, and they can get really angry and do things that are irrational or that they might regret later on. Not the judge of the world, not the God who created everything. He has certain principles of fairness that he operates under. And that is an important element to understand the justice of God as we look at God establish certain laws and commands, and as we seek to live in accordance with the teaching that God brings us in the Bible, that it is not just a cruel God or a God who just acts by his own selfish impulses, but a God who acts out of his own good and righteous character. So I think that is the main point. But we also see that this same God, who is the judge of all the earth, invites Abraham into a conversation with him. Makes some decisions on the basis of how Abraham appeals. Not only do these two powerful angels have conversations with God about what they are going to do, but Abraham himself becomes involved in this conversation. It points to the ultimate destiny of mankind, that we will reign with Jesus Christ, that we will have power, that we will be welcomed into his fellowship, into a relationship with him. And this chapter is the best example of Abraham having a relationship with the living God. It's why he's called in 2 Chronicles, he is called a friend of God. And James 2 verse 23 refers to this as just as Abraham was called a friend of God. And you and I also, through Jesus Christ, have a relationship with God, can know him, can walk with him as a friend. It's not a casual relationship like we can just approach God any way we want and be sort of whimsical about it and not have any concern for how powerful God is. Abraham gives many indications in this text. He says, for instance, in verse 30, "May the Lord not be angry, but let me speak." So Abraham doesn't charge in to a conversation with God and say, "God, how dare you do things this way?" He approaches him cautiously like one would a powerful king, but he does go back and forth in this conversation. He talks with him, and so he is a friend of God. The next question we need to look at is one that gets debated a lot today. I want to ask about the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. In Genesis chapter 19, we read about Sodom and Gomorrah being destroyed we're told in Genesis 18 that the outcry, in verse 20, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grievous that I will go down and see if what they have done is as bad as the outcry that has reached me. If not, I will know. So God says, I'm going to do an investigation. Even God verifies what is going on there. Now, of course, I think God knows everything, but I think God is demonstrating that He is thorough, that He is patient, that He is acting based on facts and what is really going on. And so He sends His angels to demonstrate to everyone, to be witnesses. There is a sort of a trial, if you will, that God allows for Sodom and Gomorrah. He gives them opportunity to repent. But nevertheless, it is confirmed how wicked they are, and that story comes in Genesis 19.